right, we're coming back to this question of characteristics of living things. We've had this question several times at this point. It's because I don't want you to forget it, and it's constantly connecting back to everything we've been learning. So, Lori, you said you had one of them. What's one?
Being able to reproduce.
Very good. So, reproduction is something that all living things have in common. What else? Maggie? They all grow. Good job. What else? M?
React.
Yes, they respond to stimuli, whether it's shorter daylight hours outside or loud noise. Could be a number of things. Mackenzie?
Complex and organized.
Very good. What else? Jen?
Evolve.
They all have the capacity to evolve. Missing a couple. Anybody else want to add to that? Anusha? Use energy. Yes, acquire and use energy, which is going to be our big focus for today and has been for the last few lessons. Bless you. Lori?
Cells.
And made up a cell or cells, right? Excellent. Did we hit all 7? I think so. Good. So the second question to this, what are some things that your body needs energy for? So what did we come up with? Go ahead, say Jean. Eating requires energy. What other things require energy? Everything. Very good, Mackenzie. So we had said that absolutely everything that we're doing requires energy, right? Is it just us that pertains to? Who can add to that statement to cover what we have been learning? Yeah, Isabel.
Every organism needs energy from.
You got it. Good job. Every organism needs energy for absolutely every life function. Okay? We have looked at so far many examples of that, and we also looked at how in some stages of life, energy is needed more so than other times in the life. So we looked at the butterfly stages, the trout stages, the apple tree, and we saw that when there was growth and development and specialization happening, a lot of energy was required. Where there was other things going on, maybe in their adult life, was energy still required because they needed to reproduce or mate or whatever else it was? Yes, energy is still needed, but maybe not quite as much as some of those beginning early developmental stages. So what we're going to be finding out is the next piece to this, which is, where are we getting our energy from? So who can remember from a couple lessons back, we get our energy from what, Logan?
Food.
Our food. Good. So every organism gets their energy from food in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to all look the same, right? Our bacteria on our desks here are eating something very different from us versus our trout versus the grass outside. But every single one of them needs to consume food, right? They're acquiring that energy, and then they're using it for their life functions. But the piece that we're missing so far that we haven't learned yet is, how does that food become energy? Some process must be taking place. So we're going to be learning a new term today. It's called cellular respiration. And we're going to find out what's involved in this process to make our food into the energy that we need for our life functions. And again, not just us, but all organisms. So you do need notes for today to fill in the guidelines. So if you go into Schoology, you're going to see a little folder. I put a folder on there that has all of your work that you're going to be working on for really the rest of this week into next week and a little bit of when we come back. So that's why it has its own folder. There's lots of documents in here. So it's December 16, 22, 2014 photosynthesis cell respiration. And when you click on there, you're going to be looking at December 16, 17 cellular respiration notes. So click on that, make a copy, so we're all ready and set to go. All right, so we have already discussed this for our class, that these are the 7 things that all living things have in common. So you'll notice I underlined acquire and use energy here because this is going to be, again, our focus for this section of the unit. So we're finding out today, how does this energy come from our food? What process is taking place? So you guys had reminded us that why we need energy is because our cells would not survive without energy, and absolutely everything that we do requires energy, even sleeping. So who can remind us again, where does this all come from? Logan told us before. Say it if you know it. Our food. Very good. Our energy comes from our food. So what system is responsible for breaking down our food? Who can remember? This lesson we did, specialized cells that turn into tissues that make up organs and organ systems. What system's responsible for breaking down our food? Jimmy? Very good, our digestive system. So we're going to look at more closely how that works. So in our digestive system, we have specialized stomach cells, if you remember learning this in a previous lesson, that help form tissues to create our stomach, as well as the other organisms, the other organs that are part of the digestive system. And this is what's helping us break down our food. So our digestive system is pretty complex, right? We've got a lot of different things going on. But other organisms, they're going to have different ways of getting their food broken down. But every organism, bacteria on our desk, the trout, the grass outside, they all need to break down their food into smaller usable molecules. How they're going to do it might look slightly different. For example, there's something like the morel truffle that you guys have been learning about. Right? So even though you see a mushroom on top of the soil, underneath would be a whole interconnected system of what kind of look like roots, but they're actually called hyphae when we're talking about fungus. And those hyphae will actually secrete out acids outside of those hyphae and break down their food on the outside. So if you imagine it like our fingers, it would be like we stuck our fingers into our food, oozed acids out from them, and then sucked them back in through our cells. So, sounds lovely, right? So that looks different than how we eat, right? We consume it into our mouth, and then inside of our stomach are where those acids break them down. They're kind of doing the opposite. They break it down first, then suck it back in through their body. So again, it's still serving the same purpose. It's breaking that food down into smaller molecules. It's just going to look different when we're looking at different organisms. All right, so after you eat a meal, your body, as well as other organisms, change those carbohydrates that you're eating into something called glucose, which is a type of sugar. So who can give us an example of what I'm talking about when I say carbohydrates? What comes to mind? So what's one thing, James?
Bread.
Bread, okay. Can anybody think of another carbohydrate besides bread? What other carbohydrates exist? Go ahead, Sean. Pastas. What else? Potatoes. Even all your fruits and veggies. A lot of people don't think of those as carbohydrates, but they are. So all of your fruits and veggies, your breads, your pastas, these are all carbohydrates. So you can think of them as kind of big, complex sugars. And so your body, when consuming them, part of the digestion is to break them into these smaller, simpler sugars of glucose. And when your cells are able to take the energy from that glucose, that's what we're talking about when we say cellular respiration. So when you see this word respiration, you might automatically think about breathing, because you're thinking respiratory system that we've learned about in the past with lungs and taking in the oxygen. It's related, but it's not the same thing. We're talking about cellular respiration. We're talking about within a cell taking your glucose and turning it into energy. So we're going to see how that works in a moment. So no matter what organism we're talking about, bacteria on our desks, the grass outside, the trout in the tank, ourselves, every organism is going through this process, cellular respiration. So if we're defining it textbook-wise, it says process by which cells can break down simple food molecules to release the energy they contain. So who can break that down even further? What's the basic idea here? When we say cellular respiration, we're basically saying what? Can anybody break it down into like 5 simple words here that we're talking about? That's exactly it. So here's the shorthand version of it. It's breaking down food, which is our glucose, for energy. That's it. Okay? So if you're a Cookie Monster lifting weights here, or if it's you just sitting listening and writing some notes, every single organism has to go through cellular respiration to do any of these activities, because that's where we're getting the energy from. It's taking that food that's in our system and turning it into usable energy. All right, so since you guys had reminded us that all living things need a continuous supply of energy for absolutely everything they do, that must mean that the cells of all living things carry out respiration continuously. So it never stops. Right now, as we sit here, cellular respiration is happening inside of your body. It's happening inside the body of that cute little dog on the screen. It's happening inside our trout right now. It's happening on the bacteria on our desks. It's happening to the grass outside. Every living thing is going through cellular respiration continuously, because as we learned, we need energy for everything that's going on in our bodies. So we're going to do a little activity to try and understand the cellular respiration idea a little bit better. So once we do the activity, we're going to come back to the screen here and see if we can relate it to cellular respiration. All right, here it is. Here's our chemical equation. So now that we've done this activity, we should be able to see how it relates to cellular respiration. A chemical equation you're going to see quite often next year because you're going to be doing a lot of chemistry. That's a big chunk of the curriculum for 8th grade. So when you look at this, you're going to see on the left side of the equation, so left side of the equal sign, this is the stuff that needs to start this process. If you look on the back where we said to do this activity, you guys told me oxygen, O2, and food, which is our glucose. Look at the first two things in this equation. Glucose, oxygen, O2. Okay? So the glucose comes from the food the organism eats, plus the oxygen, which comes from either the air or the water surrounding the organism. Equals, what's the stuff that comes out of it? So after this process takes place, it's going to turn into certain products, and that's what's on the right side of the equal sign. So we're going to see CO2, which you guys just told me, is carbon dioxide, plus H2O, which you told me is water, plus the energy. That is the whole point of this process, cellular respiration. It's basically to take this food, this glucose, and turn it into this usable energy for the organism. Okay? So when you look on the back easel, you'll see how you felt after. You told me you were breathing out heavily carbon dioxide. You told me you were sweating out water. Those are the components that it had turned into. So when you're looking at this, you can see that you have just gone through cellular respiration. As you sit here now, you continue to go through cellular respiration. Maybe not as quickly as you did when you needed to dance around to that activity, but you're still continuously going through it. So you need a little bit of background of understanding the chemistry here in order to understand how does this stuff turn into this stuff over here. Whenever we're talking about a chemical reaction, we're talking about these things. Remember this? My little Christmas balls represent atoms. These things get broken apart and recombined into something new. So you have to have a little understanding of how these things come together. So when you look at this molecule here of glucose, it's labeled C6H12O6. So some of you were making up things like G47, but in glucose, it's made up of different stuff. So anytime you see a number after a letter, that indicates how many atoms of a particular element that's in the molecule. So if we look at glucose, we see a C. Who can remember what does C stand for by itself? C, and we're talking about in terms of a periodic table of the elements, C stands for what, say Jean? You're right, good job, carbon. So let's pretend that carbon is going to be represented by a red Christmas ball, okay? So here's a carbon atom. If we look at the molecule glucose, like I said, if there's a number after the letter, that indicates how many atoms are in that particular molecule. So we should have our chromes closed and listening so that we really get this, because this part is a little bit more complex. So what would be the number of atoms, or carbon atoms I should say, in a glucose molecule? Who could tell us? Nicole?
6.
There are 6, so here they are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 red crystal balls, or 6 atoms of carbon. This is just one piece of this glucose molecule. It's a pretty long molecule. I don't even have enough hands to hold it up. So here's the first part of it. What's the next part of it? We've got an H here. What's the H stand for? Who remembers? Sean? Correct, hydrogen. How many hydrogen atoms? We're going to represent them in blue. So how many blue Christmas balls do I need for glucose? It would be, Mackenzie?
1.
Not just 1.
12.
12, good job. Yes. These numbers, by the way, should be smaller. I have to fix that on this PowerPoint. They would be subscripts, so they'd be like down here, so you'd see them a little bit better. So we're going to need 12 blue Christmas balls to attach to these 6. So I don't have quite as many as I need here. So we're going to be pretending this chain has gotten a lot longer. But it's not done yet. What else do we need? What's the O going to be as part of this glucose molecule? Mark? Oxygen, good. How many oxygen atoms? So we're going to use silver for oxygen. How many of these do we need to be part of the glucose molecule? Go ahead, Jen. 6 is correct. Good. So we would need 6 of these to go through. So let's just pretend for a second each one of these Christmas balls represents 6 atoms. So we've got C6, H12, O6. All together, this is our glucose molecule. Okay? Now, that's one piece of what we need for cellular respiration to start up. We also need oxygen molecules. So if we ignore the 6 for a second here, James had mentioned O2 represents oxygen. So oxygen in the atmosphere exists like this. The number that came after the O is what?
2.
So how many atoms of oxygen are in oxygen?
2.
Yes. So oxygen that we breathe in exists like this, a molecule of 2 oxygen atoms. All right? But this is not the only one that's needed to start cellular respiration. When you see a number in front of a letter, so not the ones that come after, we're talking now in front, that represents how many full molecules there are, okay? So if there were a 6 in front of this glucose molecule, we would need 6 of these long chains that we've just created, okay? So when we're talking about oxygen here, how many full molecules of oxygen do we need to get cellular respiration started? Nicole? There are 6. So if we were to write that out the long way, okay, if I were to write this like this, where you have O2 written out 6 times, how many oxygen atoms am I really talking about here? Count with me. There's 2 here, 4,
6, 8, 10, 12.
So how many oxygen atoms are part of these 6 oxygen molecules? 12. So I'm just going to write this here. There's a reason why I'm having you do this in a moment. So I'm going to put a little arrow so we know that that represents here. Okay? You guys already told me that this is 6 carbon atoms, that there's 12 hydrogen, and that there are 6 oxygen as part of glucose. Okay? So now we've got, I'll write it over. Well, yeah, I guess I'll do this. So we know this is 12 atoms of oxygen. All right, good. So let's look at the other side now, okay? Here, we've got our carbon dioxide, but carbon dioxide is made up of certain things. How many carbon atoms are part of carbon dioxide? If there is no number after, you can assume that there's 1. So if we're talking about carbon dioxide, how many carbon atoms are part of it? Sean? 2. Look at the number after the C. Is there any? So what do you assume that there's how many? Just 1. So there is 1 carbon atom in, 1 carbon atom in carbon dioxide. How many oxygen atoms are part of carbon dioxide? How many oxygen atoms? Go ahead, Jen.
2.
There are 2, so here's your 2 silver. Whoops. Here we have carbon dioxide, okay? 1 of these molecules. However, we just said if there's a big number in front, it represents how many full molecules. So how many carbon dioxide molecules do we have here? Say it if you know it. 6. There are 6 of them. So if I were to write this out 6 times, it would look more like this. Alright, so this time those are 2s. I'm just writing fast. Okay? How many oxygen atoms are here? 2, 4.
6, 8, 10, 12.
Alright, so there's 12 atoms of oxygen. How many carbons do we have? How many? 6 carbon. Okay. So, we have one thing left. 6 H2O. So H2O, water, has how many hydrogen atoms?
2.
Say it if you know it. 2. So blue is representing hydrogen. So we've got 2 blue. How about how many oxygen are part of water? 1. There's no number, right? So here's our water molecule. How many water molecules are created? 6. So if we were to write out H2O 6 times, It's going to look something like this. Okay. Yeah. All right, so how many O's? 1, 2.
3, 4, 5, 6,
So how many oxygen atoms?
7,
Okay. How many hydrogen?
7, 3, 4, 5,
No. 2, 4, 6.
8, 10, 12.
Good. So, there's a reason why we did this. Take a look. When we're talking about a chemical reaction, we're talking about starting with materials, ending with products. It's actually the same stuff on both sides. It's just recombined differently. Take a look. On this side of the equation, there are 6 carbon atoms. We don't see carbon anywhere else. On this side of the equation, remember when we wrote out 6 CO2 6 times, we found out there are 6 carbon atoms. 6 on this side, 6 on this side. Hydrogen over here, there are 12 of them. Nowhere else do we see hydrogen. Over here, we see it in the water. When we wrote the water out 6 times, we got 12 atoms of hydrogen. 12 on this side, 12 on this side. The oxygen, we had 6 that were part of the glucose. But on this side of the equation, we also had 12 from here. 6 plus 12 atoms of oxygen is what? 18. So we've got 18 oxygen here. Let's look over here. When we wrote out 6 CO2 6 times, we came up with 12 atoms of oxygen, right? But we can't forget about the water that we wrote out 6 times, which we got how many atoms of oxygen?
18.
No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in water. So the 6 atoms from water plus the 12 atoms of oxygen that we got from the carbon dioxide, 12 plus 6 is once again 18. So we've got 6 carbons on each side, 12 hydrogens on each side, 18 oxygens on both sides. It's the same stuff. It's just recombined differently. So when a chemical reaction takes place, all this stuff that was together, it basically gets broken apart, all these atoms get split, and it basically recombines into something else. Okay? So, good thing those bounce. That's why I got plastic in my class. Alright, so, with the equation, that's not where it ends. Now you guys are going to find out, where does this stuff come from in the first place? We need this glucose and oxygen coming from somewhere. So, let's think about it. You guys said we need energy for what? Everything. Where is it coming from? Think about our food a little bit more specifically. We had mentioned carbohydrates before, breads, pastas, all our fruits and veggies. All this stuff is directly coming from where? Where are our fruits and veggies and our breads and pastas coming from? What organism? Who can tell us? Where do they come from? Aksaya? Plants, you got it. Okay? So these carbohydrates are not the only thing. Think about the burgers that you're eating. Who can tell us indirectly how are those also coming from plants? Think about that word indirect. You guys had that with the post test the other day. Those vampire spiders indirectly got a meal of blood because they ate a mosquito that sucked on blood. So even though they didn't suck blood themselves, they still indirectly got a meal of blood because they ate the mosquito that had the blood in it. So if we're eating a cow, if we're eating a burger, how are we indirectly getting the plants inside of us? You can start. Go ahead, Logan.
The cow eats the grass.
You got it. And the grass is a
Plant.
plant. All right, awesome. So indirectly, no matter what we're eating, it's all coming from what, everybody?
Plant.
Plants. Good. But where do plants get their food from? What process? Yes. So the sun, I heard you say, and that process that the sun's energy is used to make the food is photosynthesis. So although we started with cellular respiration today, our focus is actually photosynthesis. We're going to find out how this process is responsible for the process you just learned about. So you're going to need new notes for this. You guys are going to be opening up on Schoology the notes right underneath cellular respiration notes, photosynthesis notes, and you're going to be figuring out the notes yourself. I'm done talking. You guys are going to figure it out with the moving notes in a minute.